Alabama makes the Final Four. And a guy that I'm not particularly fond of, and Nate Oates, because of the way he's carried himself at times. So Tennessee is knocking at the door. They have been. So has Alabama. Now they're in the Final Four. Tennessee or Alabama, which is more likely to become the premier basketball school within the SEC? Let me ask you that question right now, Caleb Calhoun, and I'll tell you who I think it is, and we may differ. What say you?
I think it's Alabama. Even though everything I just said about Rick Barnes and him being uniquely positioned for the future, I think Alabama is uniquely positioned because Nate Oates is younger, and part of me feels like Nate Oates is not going anywhere. And so I think it's Alabama.
You just laid out my two reasons. One, everything you said in 4 downs about Rick Barnes. I think somehow, some way, his glory days could be ahead. I don't want to call it a renaissance because he only made the Final Four one time, but I think his best days could be ahead. So I'm taking that one from you. And Nate Oates just feels like a guy to me that is using Alabama to get a job at a blue blood. I could be dead wrong on that. I thought it about John Calipari, and he actually stayed at Memphis longer than I thought he would. I thought it about some other guys, and there are some guys that just are using football athletic departments to elevate themselves to blue blood college worthy coaches. And I don't know why, but I just feel like Nate Oates is that guy.
Well, by the way, the reason John Calipari stayed longer than you thought he would is because John Calipari didn't have much success at Memphis his first 5 years there. So he wasn't that much of a hot coaching commodity for the Blue Bloods during that time. It wasn't until the last 4 years that he really took off. Even if that happens, that makes a stronger case because here's Greg Byrne, the athletic director at Alabama, is one of the better ones in college sports. I mean, Danny White's the best, I think, but Greg Byrne's really good. I think Greg Byrne will have an easy time finding another head coach to replace Nate Oates. And I think that the money, while stronger at Tennessee, I think there's just certain things that favor Alabama. They have brought in a lot of money from the Saban years, and they have a lot of money to spend on buying coaches right now.
They do. And they've got more students than a lot of third world countries. And let me ask you this: when it comes to football, is Nate Oates helped by the fact that football is not this huge behemoth that's out there, and Nick Saban gets to take pot shots at the basketball coach whenever he feels like it, which he has done. And so, Caleb, is Nate Oates' job easier because football is not dominant, or is it harder? I tell you what,
easier because.
While you think about that, let me remind people that portions of the program brought to you by our good friend at State Farm, Don Self. Customer service still matters. For over 40 years, they built their business on taking care of their customers. Greater Chattanooga area, call 423-396-2126, just below, 423-396-2126, or go to donself.net, donself.net. So is Nate Oates helped by the fact that his football program is probably going to be good, but probably not going to be elite and dominant and snag all the headlines and have all the decision-making power in an athletic department that one would expect about that type of dominant program in the SEC? So is he better off without a dominant football program?
Probably, but the thing that really helps Nate Oates is Alabama showed they were willing to risk everything for him when they were a dominant football program. I mean, last year, the Brandon Miller incident.
And explain all that for those that aren't big basketball fans, the whole gun charge issue. Because I thought at the time that the entire program should have been suspended until they got to the bottom of it.
So Brandon Miller, their 5-star talent last year, had allegedly handed the weapon to a player who then went and allegedly killed a mother. It was a bad situation. We don't know Brandon Miller's involvement. I do think, look, I'm going to say it and people can hate on me on this, but I do think Brandon Miller I don't think Brandon Miller gave the gun thinking it was going to be used for murder. I'm just going to be honest with you, Dave. I don't think that Brandon Miller thought that.
Well, no, but my point is, with that situation involving two players and your star player, it's time to take a quick break and make sure everything's copacetic.
Yes. When all that broke, Nick Saban came out and said there's no wrong place, wrong time.
Right,
and
which is what Nate Oates had said just a week earlier.
That it was wrong place, wrong time. Yes. And the truth of the matter is Alabama still stuck fully behind Nate Oates. I think contradicting what the empire of Alabama was at the time, Nick Saban. And so if that's the case, they're more willing to stick by him now in the future. I think Alabama is going to, I think they made that very clear. Look, had Bruce Pearl done what he did to Tennessee, had he done it at Alabama, he'd stay the coach at Alabama because they would have probably fought like hell for it. Now, you can say whether or not that's right or wrong, but I think that Alabama says we are going down with our ship.
I'll give you another reason. He would have survived his fiasco at Tennessee had he had a Final Four in his back pocket. That changes the way you're viewed. He would have survived it at Tennessee. Had he already taken Tennessee to a Final Four, he would have survived it then. And now Oates has that Final Four in his back pocket. Is he essentially unfireable? Which, if I'm his agent, I'd love to hear because I still believe his agent's looking for. I really believe the Oates camp wanted the Kentucky job to come up.
Oh, I think you're probably right. They probably did. And it's, but also Oates would want a pay raise to go to Kentucky. And is Kentucky going to give much of a pay raise to a new head coach if John Calipari leaves? Because we're talking about a guy they got to pay $33 million to. So, and by the way, no matter when Calipari retires, they have to pay him $33 million.
So we're discussing Alabama or Tennessee, which can be the basketball power in the conference if it shifts from Kentucky. When we talk about Tennessee and Rick Barnes, you like his chances for long-term success. So I'm going to make you athletic director Caleb Calhoun. What kind of contract are you giving him? What kind of extension are you giving him?
The Rick Barnes extension?
Yes. Now, okay, let's be fair. Let's be fair. The numbers of any extension or any contract are all about the buyout. I could give Caleb a 25-year contract, and my buyout on my end is $25. And what's Caleb got? He's got a big sack of nothing. Okay. So the number matters. So we're going to assume that the years are going to be paid. Okay. We're not going to say there's some sneaky way that, don't be surprised if you see this happen on the ladies' side with Kelly Harper, that we're going to assume those years are going to be paid. So you have a choice. You give him no contract extension, so he sits at 4 years, I believe. You might want to double check me on that. He sits at 4 years, which you don't like to tell recruits because they like to think that your coach is going to be there for 5 years. And it does send a sign that you could be close to retiring. You give him just another contract, which is a year extension, no raise, or you give him a big whopping raise. We might want to make this the poll question, or the last option, lifetime contract. He's done as much or more at Tennessee as anybody has. Lifetime contract. That's what I'm giving him.
I'm not giving him a lifetime contract. I got your point because we talked about this last week. I'm not giving him a lifetime contract. I'm keeping it standard at this point. I mean, Rick Barnes is already,
So you're just lopping on another year, probably a 15-20% raise.
Yeah. He right now makes $5.7 million. You know what I would do? Bruce Pearl makes $5.716 million. I would up Rick Barnes' contract to make more than Bruce Pearl. So maybe up it to 5.8, 5.9. He's still behind Bill Self, John Calipari, and Tom Izzo. And then he'd be fourth. And I had extended through 2028, 29, since it's 2027, 28. And I am a believer that you always stick around for 5 years. So you always do 5-year contracts.
Caleb, you're like a double yellow line. You're right down the middle. Go all in. Go all in and tell him you're the guy. You're here forever, building something special. Because you don't think that kids' families are going to be worried that the guy's about to turn 70? This way you tell the fan base he's in incredible shape. He's doing fantastic. He wants to coach forever. He's managed to get his wife living in Texas so he didn't have to deal with a wife anymore. So, Caleb, everything's set for him. Lifetime contract.
Forge his birth certificate. He looks 55 as it is. Just forge his birth certificate and tell everybody he's 55, okay? Who would disagree with it?
lifetime contract. You got to do it. Quality Tire Pro, the Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service, automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. All work covered by a nationwide warranty. They're on Cherokee Boulevard in downtown Chattanooga. Stop by and say, hey, it's Off the Hook Sports. Hey, Bo. Off the Hook Sports. Hey, Bo. Quality Tire Pro. Again, Quality Tire Pro. That is right there on Cherokee Boulevard downtown. Now, I said all that. I'm going to protect myself on the back end, Caleb, to make sure I'm not giving him too much if I give him a lifetime contract, right?
So you're going to give him you're going to try to cheap out on this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Like
just say it's lifetime.
Like his
last buyout of
$2. I know. Like his last 10 years when he's 90, he basically gets the same he'd get from Social Security. It's about the same, which is nothing, which is going to be none for me and Caleb.
I typically caution on lifetime contracts because you always question. Because look, I think coaches specifically more than other people they get too big for their britches a lot of times, and they become very arrogant and think very highly of themselves and become lazy. Joe Paterno. But I do think that, again, there are some altruistic coaches in the sport. I think Nick Saban was as committed as he could possibly be the entire time he was head coach, and he had basically a lifetime contract at Alabama. I think Rick Barnes would be as committed as he could possibly be as long as he was a head coach. John Calipari, he'll go with the win. You know what I mean? It's like John Calipari's not going to be as committed as he could possibly be if he doesn't feel like it anymore. But Rick Barnes would. Nick Saban was. I don't think Rick Barnes would ever think he's holier than everybody else around him. Do you?
No, even though he probably is. Another note on Rick Barnes that I think is worth discussing is when you talk about all the NIL advantages that he has and all the recruiting advantages that he has. You're right on all of those, Caleb. But my question is, when he actually sits down, you look a little bit older on television, in the living room than you do on television. When he sits down in the living room, do you think his age is a factor? Because I can tell you, as a father of a college-age son, Nick Saban in his past couple of years would have been a factor because somebody's got to retire sometime, right? And it would be a factor. It would be a factor with Rick Barnes. 70 sounds different, much different than being in your 60s.
It does. But again, I just read a story on this yesterday, Dave, where the wealth transfer from the boomer generation to the younger generations to their kids is probably not going to happen because they're living so shockingly long that they're just going to run through all of their wealth and like healthcare costs and things like that. And basically people are living a lot longer, particularly that generation of which Rick Barnes is a part of. And also Rick Barnes has money, so you can afford to live a lot longer when you have money. And so 70 for Rick Barnes really is 55 for what we used to think 55 was. And okay. I mean, it's 70 for Rick Barnes. Put it this way. It ain't 70 for Bear Bryant, who I don't even think made it to 70. Okay, I could be wrong on that, but
not sober. All right, SEC football on the message board said, I'm tired of him sitting on the bench the whole game. That's all Rick does. Bruce is up all game energetic. This to me is that Philip Fulmer clap thing. Remember the Philip? You don't like him when he's not winning, right?
Right. You hate it when he's clapping and they're losing.
I mean, if Tennessee's winning, if they beat Purdue, we're saying today, look how calm, cool, and collected Rick Barnes was just sitting on the bench, manipulating things like the Godfather, right?
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, nobody said this about Coach K, who always set the bench and who was always calm and collected, right? Never got animated and won 5 national titles.
If you ever happen to find yourself on media row next to Coach K, you might want to throw in some ear, what do they call them? So you can't hear earplugs?
Earplugs?
Yeah, that guy can make a sailor blush with the way he curses. Wow. Strong. He takes it to another level.
Coach, you may think he's a little bit holier than thou. Coach K. That's one.
Oh, yeah. He was. Yes. Okay, yeah. Absolutely. So Rick Barnes is the real deal. That's got to factor into your decision as well for long-term success, Caleb. I mean, we could sit here and talk about how long one coach is going to coach at another place, but I know the UCLA flirtation was there. I thought that was kind of a last opportunity for Barnes to go to a bigger or better job, and that's debatable. And he seems really happy at Tennessee. He's not going to be heard cursing. He's just a known commodity. So being a known commodity in recruiting helps you.
It does. It does. And also what he's known for, and this is, he's known for developing talent. Hey, if you're a guy that like you just need one other aspect of your game to improve so you can be a top NBA draft pick, why wouldn't you pick Rick Barnes? And then the NIL money's there for you.
Sure. Now Chad says, and I'm going to get to SEC football. Flat out asked, do we want Rick Barnes gone? I know some people may want that. Chad said even the press room question about officiating. So only Caleb and Purdue think it was not a big deal that close of a game, and the Vols in double bonus, and Purdue has 2 fouls with 10 minutes left. All right. You want to answer
Tennessee fouled
that?
more than Purdue yesterday. Tennessee fouled more than Purdue. There, simple.
Yeah.
Like
SEC
guys,
football. Okay, that's fine. I thought they did too. Not maybe to that extent. SEC football. Do you guys want Rick gone? We all have opinions. No. Matter of fact, I think that would be the worst thing you could possibly do.
I agree. You're Rick Barnes. You're on the precipice of they say the 70s are your golden years sometimes. Maybe Rick Barnes is about to have some golden years in his 70s. I'm telling you, that's possible. So watch out.
Yeah. Just look at Blanche from the Golden Girls.
Yeah, I knew who you were referring to.
Yeah, those can be your years. He can be out there loving every minute of it.